Hey, hello everybody. Welcome again to another session of DynamoDB Office Hours. I'm Rick Houlihan here. I'm principal principal technologist, senior practice manager of NoSQL services, and I work on the DynamoDB service team, as many people know. And today we're going to do another data modeling session. We're going to talk a little bit about a hotel reservation service. And again, familiar thing. We all use these types of things. And I got kind of talk in context of, again, I broadcast the schema out on Twitter there, but we'll talk in the context of a reservation system for a hotel, a literal hotel. But there's a lot of overlap, obviously, with things like Expedia and Airbnb are a couple of popular DynamoDB customers. And we can talk a little bit about what those customers are doing with DynamoDB. It's big stuff, right? Not necessarily small stuff, where they're aggregating, bookings, reservations, across many, many properties, many, many locations. And DynamoDB is their, back end system, in Airbnb, as we can, they've published out there, got some blog posts around Nebula, their storage platform, and how they've chosen DynamoDB for that back end for a lot of these types of workflows, right? So I've actually worked with these teams on building out some of these services. Again, these types of enterprise operations are built from not just a single service, but many, many, many services. One of which is reservations and bookings, right? So that's really what we're going to talk to today, and make sure everything is working. Absolutely. Sometimes I talk and I'm muted, and I don't know if you people can hear me until 5 minutes later when someone hits me on chime and says, "Oh, what are you doing?" But now it sounds like I'm actually alive, which is which is good. So this is the schema we're going to work with today. Again, revolves around hotels, hotel rooms, and bookings within a hotel. You can kind of think of even the larger hotels, right? I mean, how many rooms are we talking around? About 1,000 rooms, maybe. Some of the very mega conference centers, maybe more than that. But even the largest hotel is not going to be driving, thousands of transactions a second against this system, right? They're going to be driving much smaller amounts of traffic against the system, and really it's about reservations, bookings, and and the check-in operations and those types of access patterns, right? So guests make reservations; those reservations don't become tied to a room until there's a check-in, and there's a whole bunch of access patterns around all of that, and so that's kind of what we're going to talk to, and we'll see how far we get. So let's go ahead and go back to our data model here and just kind of get going. If we look at our entity relationship model here, diagram, we've got a bunch of things that, again, if you kind of follow the NoSQL modeling paradigm, we kind of try to denormalize this lookup table information, right? Lookup tables typically don't, have highly mutable data, right? Like the room types, the reference countries, the metadata around those objects doesn't change at high frequency, if ever. So, this is actually a great data. All these lookup tables, all these things that kind of fan out off of like hotels, right? Where we have the hotel characteristics and chains, and chains might have their own, what do you call it? Items, and we can represent that in the model or not. But anything that's around a type or a rating or some sort of a lookup table type of item, we're going to denormalize those into those hotel items. So let's go ahead and create the first item we'll create. It might as well just be that hotel item. And so this will be our hotel partition. Inside that hotel partition, we'll just call this Sorky A for now. This is going to be a hotel item. And what do we got there for properties? It looks like, some sort of name, address, postal code, that kind of stuff. And the URL, we don't necessarily need to add those properties. There's a couple other properties we want here to add, though. And it's going to become important for us kind of down the road when we do our bookings. It's going to be details. So details about the hotel include things like, how many rooms they have of each type, and what amenities and whatnot and those are some of the things that you would probably see in these extended hotel characteristics, right? We're going to kind of include those in this details blob. And again, one of the things that's going to be in that blob, we might as well just go ahead and stick it in there, is going to be room defs, right? And room defs is going to be some other, basically a map, and those could be various types of rooms and how many rooms they have of each type. And this is going to become important because when I go to reserve from the hotel, right, I'm going to have some top level things that I want to populate around the UI, like again, what types of rooms are available and whatnot, and then the things like what characteristics the rooms have, what characteristics the hotel has. Okay, so the other thing we want to put into these partitions are rates, right? Rates, when I go to make a booking and I'm selecting from a hotel, I want to be able to see, what rates are available over what days, basically by room type, more than likely. But let's go ahead and just start off with a rate item. Rate item is going to have, some attributes, which is going to be a start date. It's going to have an end date. And it's going to have like an amount, obviously. And it'll probably be for a room type. So let's say just we already have a type, so our type. That's our room type. And so in here, we'll just stick some dates. And we're going to have, and let's say, so this rate might be valid from, we don't really need a timestamp over. I guess we could put a timestamp, but it's going to be something that's probably more like 00. And it would be valid to some other day. So let's just say that this might be our rate for, all of September. How many days there are in September? One of those things that nobody ever remembers. We'll call it 30. And from 1. Now I might have, ranges, rates that start within the month that are, only for part of the month. And I might have a blanket policy across the month, but we'll see when we get into the querying of all this, how we would absolutely handle all that. And then this would just be some amount. And, this would be maybe a standard room, whatever that is, standard. I'm not going to add a bed type. That might be extended information. And so let's go ahead and create our sort key here. So now when I query for rates on a given hotel, then I'm probably going to want to get, across the, I want to get all the rates that are available during the duration of my stay, right, would really be what I'm looking for. So I kind of want to get all this rates that have a start date that's less than my start date, right, and an end date that is, greater than let me see, less than my end date, right? No, end date that is greater than my end date. So is that right? Yes. And so what I'm going to look for is a key that's going to be based on start date. And so let's do that. Let's say we have, and we'll get this in a second. I'll clarify that query. Start date. And we're going to want to tack on some sort of a unique ID there. You might have rates all starting on similar days. So these are rate ID. And we're going to have to add that attribute, or it will show up. Rate ID. Okay. So now, if I query for, say I'm booking for September 7th to September 10th. I want to get all the, rates that have a start date that's less than September 7th and an end date that's greater than a start date less than a start date less than my end date is what I want. Yes, a start date less than my end date. And an end date, that's all I really need. Start date less than my end date. Because what's going to happen here is I'm going to put a TTL on these rates on the end date, right? So I'm never going to have like a whole pile of historical data sitting there. So if I get all the rates that have an end date less than my start date, then does that work? End date less than start date. No, end date. I need an end date greater than my start date, right? Because if it's less than my start date, then the rate's already passed. So I need an end date greater than my start date and a start date that is less than my end date. That's what I need. So this is the wrong key. This actually needs to be end date. All right, so end date greater than my start date. These types of queries are always kind of a little bit confusing until you get the semantics out. What is it exactly I'm looking for, right? So I want end date greater than the start date, and I want a start date that's less than my end date. Okay, and so what's going to end up happening here is I'm going to pull back, basically all my rates for all the rates that have an end date greater than my start date, yes, and filtering on start date greater than my end date. Yeah, so that'll give me all the rates that are active during my stay, right? And so the question here, of course, is how many items am I returning, because I'm querying based on end date greater than my start date. That could be till the end of the, rate of the period that we have rated. We can certainly limit that to a reasonable period of time, right? So an end date greater than my start date and less than my end date. No, I couldn't do that, because end date greater than my start date and, no greater than, let's say, 90 days or whatever a rate period might be, right? I don't want to get rate items out till the end of time. I might have these rate items created for my hotel for the next 365 days. And again, that might actually not be terrible, because how many items is that? How frequently is this query? Again, as we said, we're not really driving hundreds of transactions per second, thousands of transactions per second. We're driving spurious traffic when reservations are made against the hotel. So honestly, fat reads probably aren't really even a big deal here. I would just not even worry about it. The hotel rates might be defined for some period of time, 12 months from the current day. How many rate records am I going to pull back for that 12-month period? 50, 60. If I'm querying for January 1st and I get all of them, then it's not going to be that many. I mean, the total number of RCU consumed from that read will just be, just a few. So honestly, wouldn't worry about it. You're going to be filtering on the to make sure that the start date is less than your end date. So anything that has a rate that's a start date in the future is just going to get filtered out of the query. The only reason I might be concerned here is if I'm bringing back more than a page of data, or I'm bringing back hundreds of kilobytes or close, a large amount of data, and I'm really only looking for a small number of items. But that's not the case here. The worst case is I'm bringing back a couple kilobytes worth of data, maybe 5 RCUs worth of items, and filtering out 80-90% of it, and that's the worst case. So as the time goes on in that period that we're rated for, it's not going to be a huge load. Okay, so that's the query, the access pattern that we would run to get active rates during a given period for a hotel. Query by hotel ID, where the sort key is less than my, what did we say? The sort key is now the end date. The end date is greater than my start date, and the start date is less than my end date is the filter condition, and that will bring back the number of the rate items that are active during my stay. Okay, so let's take a quick look again what we got here on as far as another channel that we're going to be looking at to match rates. Once guests come in, they're going to make bookings. And then once they make bookings and they come in and check into the hotel, we're going to want to assign those bookings to a room. But first, let's go through the bookings end of the food chain here, so to speak. So let's create a customer partition. This might be a customer. Customer's going to have some metadata. We don't really care about what that metadata is for now. I'm sure there's metadata on the table, guest name, address, city, the standard stuff. We can add some sort of data attribute map in there. And what we're going to do now is customers eventually are going to come in, they're going to make bookings, right? So this is going to be a booking. And the booking is going to have a start date, end date, room type, all that kind of stuff. End date. It's going to have file type. And so let's say this booking was for value. So I'm going to check in today. Whatever check-in time is, clock, we'll call it. And I'm going to be checking out on tomorrow. Check out time. And the this is for, again, a standard room. Okay, and so of course this is just going to be, keyed on the start date of my reservation and some sort of reservation ID. And let's call this. So we want that to be just our start date, right? Okay, so now as customers make bookings, they're going to come into the system. They're going to query for the hotel or the property they're interested in. They're going to get the rates that they're interested in. They're going to select, the booking they'd like to make, and then they're going to go ahead and make the reservation, right? So once this booking is created on the table, what I would suggest is we go back to the room details on the hotel, and we would probably update the hotel to reflect the, in the room totals for the hotel for a given, and actually this is where we need to start to think about how are we going to manage this. So okay, let's think about that. When I make bookings, I need to know that the rooms are available. And so I'm going to probably want to come back during this search with daily items that reflect the room totals that are available by type. Right? Because I'm going to need to know when I query for rates, I need to know more than rates. I need to query for rates and availability, right? So what I would probably do in this particular case then is as I create rates, right? As I create, build my rate items out into the future, then I would start to create dailies for, my hotel, which would essentially reflect their daily summaries. So this would be a summary item. And this would be, it has basically a date. And there would be basically one of these in there for every day of the month for this hotel, right? And so when I go and add a new month worth of bookings, I'm going to go ahead and add 30 items to give me my daily summary, counters. I actually don't even need those. I only need to create these as soon as a booking is made, because if I don't get a summary item, I can just assume that all the rooms are available for that day. So I don't need to pre-populate these items. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's see. So this would be for today. And it's going to have a summary. And this is basically going to be room summary by type. And this is going to be, what do I want? Oh, I want to do this. Where are we? Summary. This is going to be date. Yeah, totally. So this is probably the best way to go here. Absolutely. So let's take a look at this. So now if I query for, a hotel A or hotel H1, and I say, give me everything that's between, basically has a PK or an SK that's less than, what did we say? To get the rates, I have to get the SK that's less than my end date. Right. Yeah. So I'm basically saying the end date of my reservation is 9/16. So I want to get everything that has an SK less than my end date, and filter on a start date less than my start date greater than my, start date. For whatever the query was on the filter for the rates. I can't remember. I don't want to think about that right now. But we would add another filter condition that would say, or type equals summary, right, on the filter condition line. So that's going to bring back the everything that meets the SK date range condition. It's going to bring back everything that meets the end date condition that we have on the rate, and it's going to meet the type condition on the summary because it's an or on the filter condition, so you can apply ors on the filter condition. So essentially that date range condition on the sort key brings back both the summary and rate items for the period of time during my stay. If there is no if there's no summary item that returns for a given day, then we can assume that the room defs for the top level metadata item on the hotel, which we already have because I'm not booking for a reservation unless I've already retrieved the hotel metadata. So the client already has that in its hand. If it doesn't see a summary item, it's going to assume that no rooms have been booked, so all rooms are available. So then I can go ahead and make this booking. As soon as I make this booking, what I'm going to do is the streams Lambda interaction is going to come back and it's going to update this summary item. If it doesn't exist, it's going to create it. And it's going to say, okay, great, let's update the summary item. And, we're going to say we have one less room of this type available, right? So I can have standard, deluxe, all kinds of rooms. Like basically, as soon as one gets booked, we create the summary item for that day. When I query for rates and summaries on the hotel, when I'm making my booking, I get it all, right? So that's, and so we've got a couple access patterns we've kind of defined now here on the table. We've got, query by hotel to get rates and summaries for a given, range. That's the reservation workflow. We have query by customer ID to get, history, booking history for a given customer. That's kind of my landing page workflow. And I'm going to take a break here, kind of cruise through the comments and see if there's any questions people have been asking that I should be addressing. So where are we? Okay, yes. Yeah, it's actually published on my GitHub. You can go look me up on GitHub, or I can post the repo address, and it's it's up there. You can take a look at the source code. It's really, again, I'm not. I'm actually pretty proud of some of it, but I'm not proud of the whole thing because it really was a project that evolved over time. It's one of those things, design code, and it was built on the fly by my team years ago and hacked and updated over the years. I just recently updated to make it editable. It used to be read only. You used to have to create the models in JSON and you could visualize them on the modeling tool. A lot of this functionality is going to obviously start to up here in Workbench as well. But yeah, I can pull that GitHub repo. Let me get that. Come on. There you go. So and there's not any readmes or anything like that. The code's all jQuery. It's again, it's not the most current code base. I think it was written 7-8 years ago and hacked together from JavaScript and jQuery. So, but certainly if you have ideas, features, recommendations, certainly if you want to make contributions, feel free. I'm happy to look at any pull requests and we'll see what people come up with, right? Let me see. Yeah, mostly questions about the tool, huh? Yeah, that's interesting. But anyways, yeah, there's a lot of I like the functionality in here. It's why I use it. It's more fluid to have a conversation around. Workbench is more full featured. It has a whole bunch of functionality around management of your tables, management of your data. This tool is very lightweight. It's simply for data modeling. It doesn't do a lot of the management workflows that Workbench supports. That's not in this tool. All right, so it sounds like folks are at least getting the data model that we're building. This is good. Let's talk about some of the other workflows that might happen here and some of the other entities. So we kind of went through, what do we got? We got hotels, we got rates and summaries, we got customers, we've got the bookings the customers can make. Now, the other workflow we probably want to address here is the check-in workflow, right? When I come into the hotel front desk and they check me in, they look at my bookings and they select a room type, right? So they got to find a room. Obviously, it's available for the course of my stay. So let's go ahead and start looking at what that might look like. Obviously, that's a query by hotel ID again. So, but what we want here is probably daily partitions of rooms by room in the hotel, and faceted by. Do we want daily partitions? I probably just want facets by type. And yes, I need the dailies, because I want to get, let's think about this for a second, because I need to find the room that's available through the whole duration of my stay, right? And so I think what I'm going to want is like some sort of a calendar item, right? And I'm going to want to say, give me a room that has no, basically I want to query for all rooms that are occupied during the duration of this booking, because the ones that aren't, that are occupied at any time during the duration of this booking, because the ones that aren't are the ones that I would select, right? When it's the front desk person, right? I need to get a room that has no bookings during this time. So in order to be able to figure out what rooms have no bookings during that time, I actually really need to select all the rooms that have a booking, during that time, right? Is that more or less? Absolutely. So let's call this, let's facet this, but we're going to call these things, what do we want to call these things? These are check-ins, I guess. I don't know what the term is. I'm sure there's a term for this in the hotel industry for a booking versus a check-in, but we'll just call it a check-in. And check-in sounds like a fake chicken. A vegan chicken. It's a check-in. Sorry. Anyway, so check-ins are going to have, and these are going to be by day, right? So when I check into my room, I'm going to create one of these items in the table for every day. Right now, that's absolutely what we have to do. And so this is going to be the date, and it's going to be the room ID, really is what it is. And it's just a flag. It's almost just like a flag item. It's saying this room is checked in. So that's all we really need there. So this key is going to be a combination of the date and the room ID. So let's say what we really want is this. And this will be, room. We have R1, 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 rate ID, reservation ID, room ID. That's not good. So let's call this basically room 1. There we go. Let's get rid of this R, because obviously when you concatenate these things, they need to be unique keys, right? So if I'm concatenating on R1, R1 for ID, those are both the same. So that's not going to be good. So let's call that res 1. And then this guy is going to be, let's see, this is going to be which check-in. This is going to be date. And right, I think so. Let's go take a look. And yes, so, and let me see, what I really want on the check-in, I don't care about rates and summaries. So I actually want to prefix this with the type. Yes. Okay, yeah. Yes. So now I can say, give me everything that is between check-in hash. Change my formula a little bit. So when you check in, okay, I got my booking. You come up, look up the booking. Here's customer ID. Here's customer booking. Select the booking for the day. We can come in and say, okay, give me all the check-ins, all the rooms that have check-ins during this stay. Right, because I know the start date and the end date, so I'm going to say, give me everything that's between check-in hash start date, check-in hash end date on the booking I'm trying to fill. Right, that's going to give me a list of rooms that have people checked in during that period. All right, I can look at the hotel's room details and I can knock out all the rooms that have check-ins. I can say, okay, here's all the available rooms, and I can select one of the correct room type to be able to assign to the user. Once I assign the booking, so to speak, I can say, okay, here's the room assignment. And I can assign the room, whatever it is, room 1105, right? I can actually come in here. This is going to be room 1, actually. What happens now is that's what creates this check-in item. Okay, the streams Lambda interaction is going to say, hey, whoa, I see a room assignment has been made. Let me go look at the start date and the end date. Let me go create the items that need to exist inside of the hotel partition. And we can do these things conditionally, right? So if any of those things fail, we can flag that there was a collision, right? So that somebody else beat you, so to speak. And then do I want to do that on streams and Lambda interaction? I don't know if I want to do that. Well, I could, but then I'd have to wait for the streams and Lambda interaction action to update the assignment to committed or confirmed, right? So this assignment state could be, pending, for example. And the Lambda could go out there and try and create the check-in records. If it couldn't create the check-in records for the room, it would indicate that one of the items failed, and somebody else claimed that room while you were trying to check in. This would be a corner case, right? Again, because we're not talking about high velocity. We're talking about interactions with the system. It would have to be two people at the front desk making the commit at exactly the same time. But that's a potential problem, but not a likely problem. If that were to occur, then there would have to be some sort of cleanup workflow. Now, you could choose to execute these things transactionally, right? So you can do a transactional commit. Let me see. Yes, you could do that. You could create a transact write API call that would execute this in a transactional manner. You could use streams and Lambda and just count on the fact that it's going to succeed 99.999% of the time. And like I said, add this little state flag, and then at the front desk, they're going to go ahead and make the room assignment. The state will go to pending. Lambda will interact. It'll update all the room assignments, and the last thing it'll do if it updates all the room assignments is it'll update this to if those all commit, then it'll update the state to complete, and then that would signal the front desk that this is good. If this failed, it had to roll back. Again, manual process. If you do it with streams and Lambda, you could execute a transact write API call with streams and Lambda that would handle the cleanup for you. And do all of this, right? And actually update the state on the item, on the check-in, on the booking item to complete, right? Or you could execute that transact write API call directly from the user interface, from the API that calls on the booking. As soon as they tries to make the call to actually make the room assignment, as part of that is a transact write API that creates. That's probably the easiest way to do it. That is actually the best way to do it. And you don't have the Lambda interactions, less complexity. I make the call, I update the room assignment, I create the items within the hotel partition simultaneously. Of course, this does mean that you would have to limit the number of days, so to speak, that a user could check into a hotel to whatever transact write API supports. I think it's 20 or 25 items. That's probably going to cover like 99.999% of your reservations in a hotel. But if you went outside that boundary, of course, you'd have to essentially check the room twice or something like that, which actually then starts to lend towards hey, if I know that I'm checking people in for more than 30 days frequently, then I'd probably want to go with the streams Lambda commit phase type of operation here. Let it decorate all those items. As long as all those item decorations succeed, come back and update the state to complete. Okay, let's see. A couple questions here. It's not. You want me to zoom in? Sorry, I can definitely zoom in. Hopefully that's a little better. Question. What is it? Okay, let's see. As a show idea, do you reviews of people's attempts at single page? I've asked for this. I've asked for people who want to come on the show, and it's kind of mixed results. A lot of people, it's like they feel like their data, especially once you get into modeling for a specific service or a specific workflow, it's almost like the model is like intellectual property, right? It's like, I don't want to tell people what I'm doing and give them my secrets. I want my competitors to understand how come I can use DynamoDB for a fraction of the cost as they are, and with their relational databases. So it's hard, but I actually would be happy to, if somebody has, some design questions that they want to make, or, critique, design review in real time, so to speak, would be happy to have that. I think that'd be a great idea. So yeah, if you do want to, put yourself on display, feel free to ping me, direct message me on Twitter, and we'll set up a time where we can come in and we'll go through all your stuff, and hopefully we'll learn a few things. Cool. All right. So, okay, cool. So, okay, there we go. So we kind of described a couple workflows here now. We've got, and these are like the common ones, right? Give me the rates and summaries for all the rates and summaries for a hotel. They're given time phase. Give me, track customer bookings, create customer bookings, and then the alignment of the customer booking to the actual room assignment on check-in. So there's a kind of 3 primary workflows. We can see from the data, let's see if there's anything interesting that we want to pull out here. Maybe I want to get all the rooms by type, all bookings by room type across all properties, right? What would we need indexes for? I'm trying to think. There's not, in this particular workflow that we just created, I don't see, there's 3 distinct workflows that are all handled on the table. I don't really see a lot of, I don't see a lot of overlap here. I'm wondering if there's a more efficient way. There might be a more efficient way to handle this check-in workflow. As a matter of fact, I think if I queried for all bookings that have a room assignment, rather than going down this path of creating these kind of check-in items, that might actually be better, right? As a matter of fact, why don't we do that? Okay, hey, actually, this is better. I'm going to go ahead and, so that workflow we just discussed, right? The check-in workflow. If you think about it, selecting all these check-in items over the date range, that's one way to do it. But the other way to do it is give me all the bookings that have a room assignment that are active during my, during the period I'm trying to check this other person in. And that's really the same query as our rate query. But it's happening across all customers. And since the booking items are distributed across the customers, then that's where we're losing it, right? And so actually this will be much better. Let's get rid of this check-in item, right? We don't want those anymore. What we actually want is a GSI on our bookings. And the GSI can actually, let's see. And that's so let's say, so a booking will only get decorated with these GSI keys when the room assignment is made. Okay, so let's call this GSI1 PK. Oh yeah, this is a much better access pattern. And so let's say GSI1 SK, and these are just going to be start date, end date, right? Is really what they are. They're kind of the same thing as, let's see, start date. Oh no, not GSI1. So this is actually GSI1 PK is going to be the hotel ID. GSI1 SK is going to be the start date, right? So I want hotel, I want all the bookings that have a start date less than me and an end date that's greater than, a start date that's less than my start date and an end date that's greater than my start date. Is that right? Less than or equal to and greater than. Yes, that's what I want. I want everything that's checked in after my day and until I'm gone. So it has to be, it can be, okay, we can have okay, hold on, let's get this. Sorry, I'm trying to think on the fly. As you guys know, sometimes that's not easy for me. Let's see. Let's put that in there. And then this is actually going to be the hotel ID, right? That's exactly what it's going to be. So now let's go ahead and go back here. And we're going to go over to our, let's see if I can get this all on the screen without shrinking it too much. We're going to add a GSI. GSI1 PK. Name GSI1. Let's create. And so if I go over here, now I can say, okay, when I go to check in, This is totally right. So now when I go to check in, I'm going to say everything for this hotel that has a sort key, which is my start date, that's less than or equal to mine, and has an end date that is greater than my start date, and less than or equal to my it's a greater than my start date. Yeah, it's greater than my start date, and that's all I really need, right? It has a start date less than or equal to mine and an end date greater than my start date. That tells me that the room's checked in. There's a booking that is between mine that has a room assignment. It's going to bring back all the assigned rooms. Now, the only time a booking gets this is when the room assignment is actually made. So when I make the room assignment, I add the GSI1 PK and the GSI1 SK to the booking record. Now it shows up on GSI1 as an assigned booking. And when I query GSI1 by hotel ID and using, again, those conditions, a start date less than or equal to mine and an end date that's greater than my start date, it's going to come back with a set of bookings that are assigned, and I'm going to see all the rooms that are assigned. That's really what I want to know. I want to know all the rooms that are assigned during my stay, so I can knock those out of the selection and say, okay, here's the room that's not. And obviously at some point, maybe when the hotel gets extremely full, if my reservation is long, they might not be able to find a room that can accommodate me during the duration of my stay, in which case they'll give me an upgrade, right? Hopefully. But this gives me that workflow right now. As the bookings expire, right, as the end date expires, I can use a TTL workflow to remove the bookings off the table and pipe them into a historical data store, right? So I can have historical bookings that live in a S3 repository, for example. Push that data into Firehose, push it into Parquet files, store it off in S3. We can query that stuff with Athena if we ever need to get historical bookings for the hotel or whatnot. Reality is, for the workflows we described, those are probably not all that interesting unless you want to maintain customer history, right? And so if that's the case, at some point, what I want to do is kind of get these things cleaned off of the GSI. We can have some sort of manual sweeper that would go through and say, by hotel ID, give me everything that has, a start date that's, less than now and an end date that is less than now, right? But I would rather use TTL to clean this up, honestly. This is one of these use cases where if I needed customer history, then maybe, okay, instead of using the same item, the same booking item, what I would do is I would create a shadow item that would be the check-in item, and it would only live for the duration of its life cycle on this index. While it's relevant on this index, it lives. When the end date, hits, it gets deleted by TTL. I can push that off into historical bookings, and we'll leave this top level booking item alone, right? We'll just, when the customer checks in, he creates a booking item, or when the customer makes a reservation, he creates a booking item. When he checks in, he creates the check-in item. The check-in item lives in his partition. It can live in the hotel partition. Either way, right? As we kind of discussed. All right. Any other questions? What are we doing on time? We got plenty of time. That's good. It's a good day. Any day is a good day for questions, right? So if you got multiple specific questions, feel free to fire away. I'll answer as many as I can. Am I using typed? Nope, not using that. Oh, that's somebody questioning somebody else, not to me. So I don't know if you guys have looked at some of these libraries out there, like OneTable, DynamoDB Toolbox, Efficient DynamoDB. I don't know what language you guys are working with. I think OneTable's for JavaScript, but that's kind of like the missing ORM, right, for a single table design. Definitely go and take a look at that. Let's see if I can find a URL here. Some of this functionality has been implemented inside the web modeler. You can actually import OneTable schemas. The authors actually assisted in that implementation. So go ahead and pull that up here. And they recently added some really cool stuff, which is around, what do you call it? item level metrics, which is kind of cool. I'm going to go ahead and see if I can post. Where'd that go? Too many windows. There we go. What's the thing about all these monitors? Big monitors, too many windows, you don't know where you are. Anyways, this is a great library that, and they had things like, what do you call it? Item level metrics. So you can, and I think if you were following me on Twitter, I just recently sent out a tweet talking about their item level metrics. It gives you things around, what's the most requested entity, what's the most expensive entity, what are the most expensive queries, things by entity type, by, all kinds of really nice slicing and dicing of the single table data and that you can take a look at with that library. And it gives you a lot of functionality around being able to auto-generate keys, right? Like when you have these composite keys like I have here, this is actually a value template formula that was defined by the one table guys. And if I export the one table schema, what happens is if you use the one table library, you don't need to actually create this key yourself. You just need to decorate the item with the appropriate attributes, and the one table library handles creating the composite key for you. So you just define these value templates like this, and you say it's an entity type is whatever, booking, hotel, rate, summary, and it actually tracks all those entity definitions, the attributes that are supposed to exist on those entities. It'll validate the types of those attributes. It will transform those attributes, create those composite keys. It does all that stuff for you. So if you like the functionality that's in the modeler here, you really like the functionality that's in those libraries, and especially one table, which has been very thoroughly vetted by the Sense Deep team. So definitely well worth taking a look at that for some of that ORM type functionality that everyone always wants. And, I'm not a big ORM fan from my relational database days. I always figured the ORM was a way to be able to insulate the developer from knowing what's going on, which is usually a way to be able to create very inefficient queries. And it's generally true, even with RDBMS. In NoSQL, it's been an abomination to date until now. Right now, these tools, the DynamoDB Toolbox, one table, they're giving you a lot of flexibility that's really targeting this concept of an indexed object collection, the single table design. That is what NoSQL is about, right? It's not about third normal form. It's not about complex queries. It's essentially key value lookups and hash joins, and that's how we should be looking at NoSQL. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. I just honestly sometimes I just tweet what I'm thinking, and I'm really happy that people get value from the content. It's surprising, but it's actually great. The knowledge of NoSQL is still thin in the market. We're not there yet into that early majority type of adoption on the adoption curve. So it's I guess still a little scarce or rare, but becoming better, right? I see a lot of people now are actually coming up with designs that are impressing me. So this is good that message is going out there. Yeah, I definitely am a contrarian. There's no doubt about that. All right. Okay. We covered a lot in the session. We're probably got about 10 minutes left. If folks have any questions they want me to go through, or any access patterns, feel free to fire away. Other than that, I'll probably end up giving you a few minutes back. As always, I'll try and post this model up online. Let me go ahead and save it now so I can remember to post it up there, and I'll send a tweet out afterwards with the link to the video. Is anything else last minute here when someone wants to talk to you, go for it. Otherwise, that's what we got for today, and hopefully it was a good session. And again, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter anytime. And if you have questions or suggestions for future shows, I'm always open to suggestions. All right, great. Sounds good. Absolutely. No spreadsheets. There's also DynamoDB Workbench. The NoSQL Workbench for DynamoDB is a great tool as well. It's it's right now for this kind of smart editing functionality. This is really the only tool out there. I know that the other teams that have had some tooling out there are going to be delivering functionality down these lines as well. Watch for that in future shows. There's going to be some releases coming up, exciting stuff that the Dynamo-based teams already talked about, and we're going to be showcasing that functionality on the show as well. I appreciate the feedback. All right, guys, thanks a lot so much. And we'll be back in a couple of weeks. I'm going on vacation, so I'll be offline for a couple of weeks here. I'll be tweeting from Hawaii, and hopefully we'll be able to have a good time. And we'll see you back in a couple of weeks for the next show. Talk to you later.